All right, guys, welcome back to Downtown Rams. As always, I'm Alexis Kraft, joined here with my co host, Jake Ellenbogen, and we are coming to you sadly with our last recap episode of the season. Our Rams lost 22 to 28 to the Philadelphia Eagles in the divisional round of the playoffs. Heartbreaking loss. We all watched it. We were so close. We were so close there in the end, and we couldn't pull out the win. But you know what? It was just one of those brutal games. Second half ended up being a snow game, Jake, and it just was kind of the game you kind of had to grind out. And unfortunately, it didn't go the Rams' way. And we're going to talk about a lot of the reasons why it didn't go the Rams' way. But I think, I know I speak for both of us, and I'll let you talk more about this as well too, is that we're just honestly like so proud of this Rams team, regardless. I mean, the adversity that this team faced all season, starting 1-4, battling the injuries, having the really hard schedule to come this far is truly remarkable. And we're going to talk about kind of some of the heroes of this season and some of the things that we liked just as much as we talk about, some of the things that need improvement, right? We'll cover it all. But I think, just to start off the episode, I think it's really important to touch on how proud we are of this Rams team. And you know what? We are very bummed that they lost the game. They lost fair and square. There's no denying that. And again, we're going to talk about that. But just very, very proud of this team, Jake, and really bummed that this is our last recap episode of the season because it feels like this team wasn't ready to stop playing. We really believe that they could have advanced and really gone for a strong run, but it came down to, about 5 or 6 plays that, over the course of a playoff game against a really good team against the Philadelphia Eagles just can't happen. But Jake, before we kind of start to get into the nuances and details of what, went wrong in this game against the Eagles, what's your brief thoughts about this season for the Rams?
Yeah, it ended way too early. I think they outplayed and this is actually the positive, and this is why I feel good about the future. In the Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford era from 2021 on, I don't think the Rams have ever been outplayed in the playoffs. I think they outplayed the Lions last year. They should have won that game. And they outplayed the Eagles. They should have won that game. I think that's a really good feeling to have where you don't feel like the coach was just caught off guard. You don't feel like Sean McVay didn't belong there. You don't feel like they froze up. They pretty much outplayed the Eagles for the majority of this game. And I think a big thing here is that when you have, Saquon Barkley and just the dynamism that he creates, I mean, it just goes to show you. I mean, I said it earlier today, and of course, Eagles fans don't know when you're giving them a compliment or not, but I said that, Saquon Barkley would have an argument to win MVP because there's no way that they get to the NFC title game without Saquon Barkley. And so that pickup was huge. And, it's frustrating because I would probably say like 90% of the game, I think the Rams controlled, but those explosives matter. And it was those 3 explosive runs, the Jalen Hurts run, the 2 Saquon Barkley runs. Even still, the Rams came back and they should have won the game. They were 14 yards away. They had an opportunity. Uncharacteristic false start by Kevin Dotson. Uncharacteristic, just missed blocking assignment in the middle by Bo Limmer. That's really all she wrote. So it was wicked frustrating that they go down 28-13 and come back and have a chance to actually win the game and or 28-14. But I just think the thing about the Rams is that they just had so much resolve and they came back so many times this year, and the defense had to make stop after stop after stop at the end of the games. And I just think the way the season ended was pretty much how the whole year looked like it was going to go, is that the defense did their job and the offense ultimately let them down. And is that a knock on a certain player? No, but that was the offense. Having Matthew Stafford, having, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp and Kyron Williams, they were not good enough this year. They just weren't. This is a team that coming into the season, I expected them to average close to 30 points a game. And I didn't think the defense would be nearly as explosive as it was down the stretch. but this ended up being a defensive minded team. And the good news is for the Rams and fans is that they finished as one of the hottest teams in the league. Um, when you're looking, and it's hard to predict this league, Alexis, but when you're looking at how teams finish out the season, the previous year, kind of gives you a little bit of an inclination of what they could do the following season. And so, with this Rams defense being as young as they are, most of their starters will return. Really, not too many guys are going to hit the market on the defensive side of the ball. Really, just Kello, Michael Hoyt, and Bobby Brown. And I'd love to have all three of those guys back, and I think they would as well. So we'll see how that goes. But for the most part, everybody else is returning. Roseboom as well is also a free agent, but everyone else is returning. And when you have this young nucleus they've built in the trenches with Kobe Turner and, of course, Braden Fisk and Byron Young and Jared Verse, and, it's really, it's a really good sign for the future. Jared Verse not only is the defensive rookie of the year, he was one of the best defensive players in the league, period. So the Rams found a lot of huge pieces for the future, and it coincides with just who they are. I mean, the last 2 years, they've drafted extremely well. You go back to the 2017 season where they find Cooper Kupp and John Johnson, Josh Reynolds, and Samson Ebukam. And, they've drafted well in the past, but they've learned from those mistakes, those minor mistakes that most drafts, like teams would be totally fine with. The Rams have tried to fine tune every little bit about their draft classes, and they came away with a stellar draft class, a stellar free agent, college free agent class, guys like Jalen McCullough, and of course, Omar Spates, relying on them heavily down the stretch. And I just think that's a really good sign, because I'll tell you one thing, the Rams are going to have some money to play with this offseason, around $50 million in cap space. They have upwards, close to 90 million that they could free up to 90 million as a max. Not saying they will, because that's kicking the can down the road, but they have the potential to free up some decent cap space and actually go shopping. And I think the defense, for the most part, they should be trying to run it back. And I think the offense, for the most part, they should be trying to upgrade, skill position players. I think obviously Puka Nacua, you feel great about long term. You feel really good about Kyron Williams. Maybe not everybody, but you and I do. And apparently Les Snead, because they're already talking about a potential extension. But I just feel like when you look at this team, the biggest things that they need to focus on if they want to win next year are finding some, dynamic playmakers, finding some explosives. And, does that come in the light of adding another running back via the draft, via free agency, like a J.K. Dobbins or a Ty Johnson, to, be in combination with Kyron? I don't know. Does that come with maybe, a T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, somebody like that? Maybe. But the point is that the Rams know what they need to fix. They know that this offense, it's unacceptable for them to not even be able to score 23 points in a playoff game. And I know they almost did it, but they didn't. So that's the thing. I think going into this offseason, you feel really good about the defense. The coaching staff stays in place. You still have Sean McVay. Matthew Stafford is likely going to come back. I don't really see, I would almost give it like a 99.9% chance. But then again, you never know. I just don't see him leaving. And so with that said, you got Kyron Williams on a contract, still 1 year deal left. And then, you have Puka Nacua, like I mentioned. Does the tight end room get overhauled? Does the offensive line get overhauled? I don't know, but there are a lot of different things that they can do to upgrade this team. And the great thing is, I don't think they have to do too many where they can go and win a Super Bowl, because they have the coaching staff and the leadership that they currently have.
Well, I do want to talk about all that, but I think we should cover the game first, and kind of, because I think by covering the game, we can highlight some of these issues, right, that we know
Mm-hmm.
need to be fixed, in the off season. So let's start by giving kind of a recap of the 22-28 loss, right, against the Eagles. Now, going into this game, we knew that there was going to be a chance for bad weather. We knew going into the game, the second half was going to be very snowy, and it was, spoiler alert, but it got snowy, it got brutal, it was very cold. Because of this, Jake, I was a little, I felt like we needed to get going in the first half. I felt like this was going to be the window for both teams. This is going to be the cleanest, whether you see all game, this is going to be your shot to really, if things get like really bad in the second half, like you want to start scoring now. So I thought that the first half is pretty lackluster. I want to start by, and I feel like I want to start by talking about Kyron Williams because my mentions have been exploding. Your mentions have been exploding. It's a big part of this game. Jake, you went and watched the Philadelphia Eagles game at SoFi, right? And something that you had said when we did that episode is you said Kyron Williams actually ran really, really well against the Eagles.
He
Guess
did.
what? He ran really well against the Eagles in the playoff game too. I think everybody, wants to talk about the fumble, and we are going to talk about it. It's bad, it's concerning. But if you look over the course of the stretch of this game, unfortunately, Jake, you and I are going to have to talk about a lot of errors by a lot of different people of things that went wrong. The fumble, however, was, I would say, at the one of the top events of things that went wrong in this game against the Eagles. But I also do want to be, fair to Kyron. He ran for 106 yards against an Eagles defense that's
In a
very
blizzard.
good. Yeah, in a blizzard. I mean, and he fumbled in a blizzard. Now, I understand, not acceptable. He's got to work on the fumbles. You and I are in agreement on that. We're not excusing that. I was the first person to get on Twitter and be like, that is not okay, right? But Stafford also fumbled in the game. Kyron also recovered one of Stafford fumbles in the game. People forget about that. Jake, I think the Kyron Williams discourse is some of it is warranted, a lot of it's very unfair. Because I think, you look at this game, if Kyron didn't have those 106 yards, I think we might have lost by worse. I think it would have been a different story of the game had he not run the ball, really, really well. Obviously, the fumble's not great, but what people also forget. So I'm gonna pull up here in order of events, and there's a couple things I want to talk about because to me, Jake, there's a couple plays in my mind aside from the end, which we will talk about the end, which literally as soon as I thought about that play where Stafford got sacked by that missed block, I literally just had chills down my spine. I wish you all could have seen that, but I literally just down my spine had chills. But, Jake, I think the story in this game, Kyron's fumble bad. Puka Nakua, he had a big drop on third down, right? Tyler Higbee had a drop on first down. Then Kyron fumbles. Then Stafford fumbles. The point is, the Eagles didn't do that. So I want to, I don't want to downplay what the Eagles did because I think that the Eagles ended up stepping up in a way that the Rams didn't. But Jake, what are your thoughts on that situation? I mean, let me start by saying this because this is what I have in my mentions right now. If you guys follow me on Twitter, you probably have seen everybody tweeting me this or whatever. Jake, did the Kyron fumble or the Stafford fumble single-handedly cause the Rams the game?
I mean, nothing single-handedly cost the Rams the game. I think
Exactly.
after the safety, I think the Kyron fumble took away all the momentum the Rams had. They were about to run the Eagles out of the building. I have no doubt about that in my mind after the safety, because on that run that Kyron fumbles, you can tell the Eagles now have officially let us know they can't stop the Rams rushing attack. They can't. So that was massive because that gave the Eagles, not only did it end the momentum the Rams had because that was right after the safety, but it also gave the Eagles positive momentum and positive field position. And at that point, you've already given them, 3 points. When in reality, you're dominating them at that point. The score doesn't indicate it because you're still down by 1, but at that point, you are actually dominating this team. And I felt like we were about to see it finally show up on the scoreboard. And that fumble annihilated all the momentum the Rams had on the road. And when you are the road team, you have to silence the home team. Now they did that, and then the fumble gave them something to cheer about. And then just like that, they're right back in it. And of course, they were already leading at that point. But here's the deal. I see a lot of people that want to throw this game on Kyron Williams. They say he's not explosive. This needs to be a touchdown. He gets brought down from behind. When you have these runs, this needs to be a touchdown. Why? Why are they saying that? I'll tell you, because this offense is inefficient. The fact that needs to be a touchdown is 30-yard run, and that's what you're complaining about because you're saying other guys would have scored a touchdown there. The fact that it needs to be a touchdown because this happened, and this happened afterwards. Oh, well, this is a miscue. And then he fumbles here and then a drop here. that's on your offense. You can't put that all on Kyren, because in the past, they won a Super Bowl with Sony Michel as their leading rusher. So miss me with the idea that they need all this explosion at running back, and the running back is the main issue. The issue is this offense is inefficient, and they have been all year long. There was a drop by Puka Nacua. There was a drop by Tyler Higbee. Those guys matter just as much as everybody else down the stretch, but they still had those drops. And those are moments in the game that you forget about, but that's a third down conversion there and a third down conversion there. And that matters. And this is why I just hate the idea of just forcing the blame on one dude, especially because the running backs before Kyren Williams, I tried to tell you how underrated Darrell Henderson is. You told me he was trash. And then you tried to tell me how great Cam Akers was. Well, Kyren Williams is a back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher. So let's not act like he's chopped liver, right? I understand 1,000-yard rushers in 17-game seasons are a little bit inflated, but Kyren was among the league leaders in carries. And the other thing was, we were told all year, I know you dealt with it, I saw it all off season long. Are we sure? Are we positive that Kyren Williams can stay healthy? And then he doesn't miss a game, and everybody, it's just mum's the word. Now it's another issue with him. Here's the problem, is that you're used to big 6'3" Eric Dickerson. You're used to Marshall Faulk, who was a superstar when they traded for him. It's why a lot of people still want Jonathan Taylor. And you're used to Steven Jackson. Okay, you're used to Todd Gurley and then the explosion. You're not used to this type of running back, because there's never been this type of running back for the Rams. Kyren Williams is nothing like Falk. He's nothing like Dickerson. He's nothing like Steven Jackson. And he's nothing like Todd Gurley. And so that's the problem, is that people now look at that because he's not a 4.4 speed guy, and he's not 6'2", and he doesn't look like he's going to carry the entire offensive line and defensive line on his back like a Steven Jackson or Eric Dickerson. He's not good. But that's not true. Is he an all-time running back in this organization? I mean, we don't know that yet because it's so young in his career. I would probably assume no, because when you look at what Falk and Eric Dickerson did, like, they're on another level. But Kyren Williams is really good, and I just don't feel like people are understanding that you got this guy in the 5th round, and he's just leaps and bounds better than any 5th round running back that you would normally get. So what I can't stand is that this guy is going out there and he's selling his body out. He's going out there and stepping into the face of pressure, stepping his face in the fan, and taking on shotgun blasts to the chest in pass pro. And the only time people will credit it is when the announcers will bring it up, like, oh, did you see him? He decleated that guy. But the problem is, he does this quite often. And, 1 out of every 10 times he does it, it's talked about, maybe 1 out of every 15. But the other 14 matter just as much as the one that you're showing on TV. So that's my issue, is that acting like he's chopped liver, acting like he's the issue, like the reason they lost, is just bullshit. It's not a fair analysis. And then you have these people that don't know what they're watching, and they're genuinely trying to figure it out. Like, is he good? Is he bad? And then you have like the nonstop pushing of this agenda that he's bad. And so people that don't know what they're watching are just kind of going with the flow here. They see it all over Twitter. Oh, he's bad, so I'm going to assume he's bad. Like, that's my issue, is that it's disingenuous reporting. It's disingenuous coverage. I understand he has his faults. We already knew that. He doesn't run the fastest of everybody in the league. He's not Jahmyr Gibbs. But to act like he doesn't have other ways that he can win is just preposterous. It's not true. It's completely false. And this offense, simply put, would not be as good if you put Cody Schrader back there, if you put Ronnie Rivers back there, or if you put hotshot 3rd round pick that everybody thought was going to replace him and didn't, Blake Corum back there. And that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, I think, listen, I understand people being really, really mad about a game. Kyren made a really, really bad play. A lot of people made really, really bad plays during the game. I think that he already had a target in his back because he'd fumbled against the Eagles earlier in the season,
Oh,
right? So I think
absolutely.
people had that on his mind. Had he not done that against the Eagles, I don't think that he would be getting as much criticism as he's got now. Matthew Stafford, also, who doesn't really fumble a lot, fumbled twice in this game. right? You had a lot of it goes to a bigger point of what you've been saying, Jake, is there's an inefficiency problem with this Rams offense, and that's why they've lost. Like a lot of the losses the Rams saw this season, it came down to the offense just simply could not get it done. I mean, listen, you look at the touchdown scores for the Rams this season. Kyren Williams has 16. He had 14 rushing touchdowns, 2 receiving touchdowns. After him is Demarcus Robinson with 7. And then you see Cooper Kupp with 6, and he missed a ton of games. Puka Nacua had 3 or 4. He missed a ton of games. Then you've got like 2 for Tyler Higbee, 1 for Tyler Johnson, and then somebody else. Like it's just there's nothing. And what does that tell you guys? It tells you that the Rams have had a problem the entire season with scoring. They haven't been able to get the job done. In the red zone, they haven't been great. Guess who's been the only reason the Rams can score in the red zone? Kyren Williams. So everybody who is on him and is really, really, angry with him, I understand you can be angry about a play, but understand that we're not in that game without Kyren Williams. You remove Kyren Williams from the Rams offense, you're not in the playoffs. I don't care what anybody says. You're just not. Look at the scoring disparity. Nobody else could score, especially when Cooper Kupp was injured, especially when Puka Nacua was injured. You had nobody doing anything, and it was frustrating as hell to watch. We all watched the 1-4 start. We all watched the Rams offense struggle the entire season, but the only person that kept them in that was Kyren Williams, and the stats back that up. So everybody can be as mad as they want about a play. I'm mad about it too. He needs to work on the fumbling in the offseason. I believe somebody messaged me. I haven't seen this yet, but I believe that he did mention that somewhere today, that he needed to work on ball security. I don't know if that's true. I have not, don't quote me on this, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is. He's acknowledged it after games when it's happened. But I think it's like people, I get it when you're angry, the Rams lost. I mean, if people want to be angry, we need to talk about the last offensive drive of the game, Jake. I mean, if people want to be angry, let's talk about the last offensive drive of the game where the Rams had the game. In my mind, I mean, after that Puka Nacua godlike catch, I mean, my God, he has so many of these, Jake, that at some point, you just like have to almost be unsurprised, but it's still so fun to watch. But he has this amazing catch. I mean, I'll let you give your thoughts on it first because I just went on a rant. But Jake, after Puka Nacua makes that sideline catch, I'm like, there's no way the Rams lose this. Like, this is like, there's no way. Storybook ending is right here. Puka Nacua makes this amazing catch, and then everything that could go wrong went wrong. Jake, what say you?
Well, according to Eagles fans, they were in prevent defense, and it was garbage time. Anyway, I'm done talking about low football IQ people. But look, I absolutely thought the game was like they were going to win it. And then the fourth, as soon as the sack happened, I was like, 4th down, this thing's over. I had no faith. And I actually want to bring up something that was kind of the big deal even before the season started. We overlooked it. We both did. I think every Rams fan did. This offensive line was built to run the football. And because of that, even when they got healthy, when push came to shove, this pass protection was not good enough. I think that they got way too like they committed before the season to build that 1,000 pounds of beef up front. Remember how many times they have about 1,000 pounds. I've never heard that brought up as much as it was this offseason. I brought it up once. People brought it up all the time. They got Jonah Jackson. They got Kevin Dotson. You have Steve Avila. You got these just absolute maulers in the trenches. This team is going to run a ton. And so I think a lot of people, because of that, we're like, oh, okay, so it's going to be like, Kyren 70% of the time, Blake Corum 30% of the time. But the problem is, it's like shit or get off the pot. And I feel like the Rams totally got off the pot right before the season. And when you already put the plan in motion in March and you sign a Jonah Jackson with a Kevin Dotson and you move Steve Avila to center, and then right before the season, you're like, oh, actually, we're going to shuffle everything. Steve Avila is going to go back to left guard. Jonah Jackson, who we paid a lot of money to, is going to play out of position, at a position he's never played before. And now, all of a sudden, forget about just the moving and everything. You focused on building your offensive line to run the football. And you do not have a premier pass protecting offensive line, like, say, the Eagles, say, the Lions, right? When you look at the Rams' offensive line, Alec Jackson is maybe their best pass protector. Then after that, Avila the run blocker. Jonah Jackson, run. Kevin Dotson's a better run blocker, although he's a good pass protector. And Rob Havenstein, while good, he struggles against the speed guys, and he is known as the premier run blocker. So this is a very run blocking oriented, heavy offensive line. And the problem is that they stayed committed to that. Okay, they didn't. You could tell, even with the injury to Puka Nacua, Sean McVay wanted to throw this football. He just wants to throw the football. People call him Sean McPass for a reason. I think it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, I think he's become more balanced over the years. But the point is, it wasn't even about being balanced. When you go out and you focus that much attention on running the football, then guess what? You got to run the football. I mean, like, your offensive line is built to win in the run game. It's not built for pass protection. The thing that people don't understand is that just because Stafford went 4 straight weeks down the stretch without a sack, people now think that the pass protection was like elite. It wasn't. Stafford was doing things where he was getting off script and he was making guys miss. And those are things that we called hidden stats, hidden yardage, if you will. Well, guess what? When it's freezing cold and it's snowing and there's snow on the ground, you have no footing, you can't do that as well. So when they got any sort of pressure on Stafford, he was basically like a deer in the headlights because he knew he couldn't, slide around in the pocket much because there just wasn't a footing. There wasn't any sort of traction or anything there. You can't move around like you can at SoFi Stadium. So that is what happened. That was the issue. That's what cost him the game. There are a lot of things that cost him the game, but not having a pass protecting minded offensive line hurts. And what I really want to know is this offseason, there are a lot of things that are going to happen. Okay. There are a lot of things that could happen, but there are a lot of things that are going to happen. What I am curious about what's going to happen, Stafford, what's the deal with him? Because I do believe he's back, but is that back for this year? Is it a farewell tour? Go and win it all in your last year? Is it a 2-year? Is it a 3-year? What does that look like? What's the deal with Cooper Kupp? Do you bring him back? I mean, at that cap number, I don't think that's even possible. $29 million. That's elite money. What do you do there? Jordan Whittington, are you going to balk at the opportunity of starting him after, the limited opportunities he showed you he should be a starter? Or are you just going to say, well, he's a 6th-round pick. I think we can do better. And then he's going to get pushed aside. Is he going to be the next Tutu Atwell? Because Atwell always had the talent. They drafted in the 2nd round, but they never utilized him. What's the deal with tight end? Do you bring back Tyler Higbee? I mean, everybody would say, yeah, right, the way he finished off the season, but he's 32. Well, what does that look like? Are they Stafford? They can go one of 2 ways, Alexis. They could go all hands on deck veteran look, where they bring in some veterans, they keep the veterans, or they could go Stafford can win it all, but we're going to start going younger. We're going to follow suit with the defense. We're going to actually do that with the offense. So they move on from Rob Havenstein. Maybe they move on from Tyler Higbee and they start, move on from Kupp and they start looking more young. There are 1 or 2 ways that they can go with this. I don't know which one they'll choose, but I don't think it's a guarantee that Havenstein is back. I don't think it's a guarantee that Higbee's back. I'd love Higbee back and I want him to retire a Ram, but I just feel like right now they are in the same position they were in 2020, 2020 to 2021, following their divisional loss. Stop me if this sounds familiar. Divisional loss in the cold, against the Packers. I mean, when they lost that game, you were annoyed because you knew Donald was 30% healthy in that game, barely played. That's the one where he had tears coming down his eyes. Cooper Kupp didn't play. Goff wasn't 100%. He gutted it out. I thought he had some really good moments. That's a great game to end on, I think, for that being his last Ram game. But you knew even before that, like I was already over Jared Goff. I appreciate his contributions. I appreciate the way he finished out his career against the Packers. That was gutsy, but I was ready. And I've wanted Stafford since 2015. So when they traded for Stafford, as you'll remember, because you came on my show back when I had the studio and everything, you called in. I said that they were going to win the Super Bowl right then and there because I knew they were a quarterback away. This team is not a quarterback away because that would implicate the idea that Stafford is the issue. And a lot of these imbeciles that are talking about this game are like, Stafford didn't get it done. He took the sack. He was folded like a lawn chair. Yeah, most of these people have watched 3 Rams games, and 2 of them were games where their team played against the Rams. But either way, Stafford showed you, and we talked about this. He wasn't healthy after that hit he took against the 49ers. He showed you as soon as he got good again and he got healthy, he's still got plenty left in the tank. He was by far the best quarterback, against Minnesota. He was by far the best quarterback against Jalen Hurts at, Lincoln Financial. I wasn't remotely close. They looked like they were playing a different sport. He's fine. He's ready to go. You can win a Super Bowl with him. He wasn't the reason they lost. So now, what do you add? I think you add another big play threat. And I think they are one elite, break. I would say they're one elite game-breaking player away.
Yeah.
Very similar to the past, but unlike quarterback, I think they need that one more pass catcher. Is that Tyler Warren out of Penn State? Is that Loveland? Is that Fannin? Is it even in the draft? Are we maybe T. Higgins, Chris Godwin? Who is that? I don't know, but I feel like they need one more guy. And the reason being, not to put it all on Cooper Kupp, Alexis, but Cooper Kupp's fall off because of the injuries. They don't have that elite receiver out there, but they have that elite money being allocated on the books. And I think that's hurting them.
Yeah, I agree. I think they've got to get a pass catcher who is fast, right? You need that explosiveness. I mean, everybody wants to hyperfixate on explosiveness in the run game. Well, guess what? You have that elsewhere. It doesn't matter so much, right? If you are missing it from the run game, the Rams offense entirely was really missing explosiveness. So I think they've got to get somebody explosive. They've got to get also somebody who can score in the red zone, like we talked about earlier. I mean, there has to be other players on the team that are efficient in the red zone. And if there isn't, then, the play calling's got to dramatically change because you can't have that huge disparity that we talked about earlier. You've got to find somebody other than Kyron Williams who can score in the red zone. And you know what? I understand that Puka was hurt a lot of the season too. I do think that, it might have been different if he had played more. But yeah, they've got to find an answer, and I think a tight end, like you mentioned, like a Warren or a Loveland would be really intriguing for that reason. And also, again, it's just diversifying your offense, diversifying the skill set, because when you have these other avenues that you can go to aside from just a Kyron Williams, aside from just a Puka Nacua, your opportunities open up, and the Rams need that. And again, it's something, it relates to the playoff game because it's a problem that we saw the entire season. But everything I feel like that the Rams needed to work on got very hyper exposed in this game, against the Eagles. And it ultimately, ended being the difference. The Rams were not able to, unfortunately, get it done. I mean, that I do believe, I will forever believe that they should have won after that Puka Nacua catch. They had it. It's frustrating. Obviously, the real nail in the coffin was obviously penalty on Kevin Dotson and then the missed block on Bill Limmer. I mean, those two, and I give the offensive line a lot of credit though, because they've really, stepped up in a lot of big moments throughout this season. But unfortunately, it happens, end of a playoff game, in the snow playing against Jalen Carter, they made some mistakes. And, we weren't able to capitalize, but I don't blame specific players for this loss. It's a team sport. No one who plays in the National Football League will ever blame a singular player for a loss. I mean, maybe it's like the Mark Andrews play. I didn't personally watch this game live because I was still very upset. But you know how everybody's blaming Mark Andrews for the Ravens loss
Lamar
against the
Jackson's
Bills?
blaming himself for throwing a stupid interception, as he put it.
Well, yeah, it just, you know what? And again, I've said it a million times in this podcast, never put yourself in a position to lose by a play. Just don't. You know what I mean? Like these close games, it's always easy to blame the last person. Like it's easy for people to get on Twitter and be mad at Bo Limmer because he missed the block. Like yes, theoretically, sure, that was the, but you know what? Don't Kevin Dotson, and we look before then, committed the penalty, right? Or you look at like you can always backtrack. It's just it's very lazy to me to see people try to throw the blame on certain players. I think it discredits, the work that these guys put in
I agree with
throughout
that.
an entire game. And yeah, I don't like it. So I think people should be a little kinder when they speak about Bo Limmer on social media. I don't think it's very helpful, and I don't think it's accurate. I mean, he made a bad play. He did. Anybody could have made a bad play. You know what? Stafford could have thrown the ball in that play right to Puka Nacua. What if it was an interception? Would everybody then be blaming Stafford for the loss? It's just, see what I mean? It's just this thought process is very flawed.
Well, it's like how Eagles fans continue to bring up how they dropped 4 interceptions. It's like that's not the gotcha you think it is. Like you dropped 4 interceptions, that's on you. You know who always brings up dropped interceptions? The 49ers. Oh, Tart dropped it. Not only are we gonna, when that gets brought up, I'm like, okay, well, Jalen Ramsey dropped 2 interceptions if you want to play that game. But we're not arguing over who dropped what. We're talking about
Yeah.
wins and losses. And I think the thing about Limmer is that he's got a bright future. And the thing we saw this year is that he was really good for being a 6th round pick. With that said, though, these are the things you live with, right? This is like when you start a rookie center, you have to know, like, how is he going to respond late in a game in an environment like that? I mean, he froze essentially. And I think it's definitely fair to criticize him. I also think it's fair to defend him, but I also think like the assumption he is the center of the future, I also don't think it is fair because, go back and look at Coleman Shelton. I mean, there were times where it's like, yeah, they really like him. He's better than Coleman Shelton. I'll tell you that right now. I didn't think Shelton's a bad player, but he's an upgrade over Shelton. But I will tell you, I think the best offensive line the Rams could come up with is if Steve Avila is back at center like the plan was last year and Jonah Jackson is playing at left guard. And it's not that Bo Limmer lost his job, because of this game. I would have done this regardless of this game. Bo Limmer was in at center because he was the hot hand. He had started those games when those guys were out. But Jonah Jackson can help this team. And I know a lot of people want to trade him, and it's weird. We get into this whole, we're coming up with mock trades. It's almost like sometimes people take it a step too far and they want to help the other team out more than they want to help themselves. And I just don't think trading I don't think trading Jonah Jackson to the Bears just because it'd be a nice reunion for Ben Johnson makes any sort of sense for the Rams. Not only could the Bears be a problem next year with Ben Johnson, because keep in mind, I mean, I had to win 10 games this year. If they had actual coaching, they would have. So they're going to be good next year. They could be a problem next year for the Rams. But not only that, Jonah Jackson is probably one of your better players on this offensive line, and he wasn't playing because he was just the odd man out, and it was during a win streak. And you're not going to mix and match and do all these different things when your team is winning, right? It's when they're losing, then you start to make these decisions. So that's the thing. Or there's an injury. Like, do you think Troy Reader ever was going to come out of this defense if he didn't get hurt? I don't think so. I don't think they ever go to Omar Spates if Troy Reader didn't get hurt. And it's the same thing with when it was Darius Williams and Kobe Durant. Kobe Durant getting hurt at the end of the Bills game gave Ahkello Witherspoon that kind of renewed energy, that renewed optimism. Not him. He was always ready to play, but I felt like the coaching staff had kind of abandoned him. He barely played he didn't even play at all against the Saints, really. Barely played against the Vikings. He was starting to lose his place in the rotation. And then all of a sudden, Kobe goes down late in that Bills game. And sure enough, Kello goes on this run that was crazy. It's probably going to get him paid as well. And it might even be by the Rams now because of it. But it is a reminder that when the Rams were in that streak, they were winning. They weren't going to bench anybody. Like when you're losing, then you bench guys. And after the Dolphins game, it was kind of like, hey, we need to make some significant changes. And unfortunately, Jonah Jackson was essentially the odd man out. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying he should just be given the job, Alexis. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is this offseason, he deserves to earn that role again. He deserves to be able to go out there and work for it. And they paid him to do a job. He got hurt. We all knew he had an injury history before this signing, but so did Nopum. So did Avila. So did Rob Havenstein. Everyone except for Kevin Dotson, who played every single game, although he played injured. And Alec Jackson, because he didn't miss a game because of injury, he missed a game because he was suspended. I mean, for the most part, when you look at that, Jonah Jackson wasn't just exclusively taking money from the Rams and being unreliable. There were a lot of injuries. I don't think Avila looked the same after those injuries, and I'm hoping he, recovers in year 3. But I wasn't overly impressed with the way he finished out his season, and I really do like the guy. And it's just, I don't know, it's just a reminder that, I'm not necessarily saying to just give the starting job to Jonah Jackson, but you absolutely got to give him an opportunity to make a run at one of these starting 5 jobs. And if that means like, okay, hey, maybe we got to move him to right tackle and we move on from Havenstein and he works out at right tackle, by all means, but you got to try and do something, because I'll tell you this right now. Okay. Jonah Jackson is going to get paid a lot regardless if you trade him or if you cut him. So if you want to eat all that dead money and get nothing out of it and cut your losses, by all means, they've done it before. It's not like it's never happened, but this is the offensive line. So even if he doesn't crack the starting lineup, he is valuable. Okay. They paid Joseph Noteboom $10 million last year, knowing full well he wasn't even going to start. So the offensive line is valuable. It's good to have a guy with, some versatility. He might not be the best center in the world, but he can play 3 of the 5 positions. I still believe he'd be able to play right tackle. I really want to see them give Jonah Jackson a shot. I'm hoping, I'm advocating to the Rams front office to not just send him away, because I think it'd be a mistake.
I agree with you. I do agree with you. And something that I know you and I both agree on is going to be Jared Verse in this game. Jake, listen. I came into this season the biggest Jared Verse fan. He was who I wanted the Rams to draft, right? He was my number 1, edge guy in the class. I really pounded the table for Jared Verse. I was ecstatic when the Rams got it, and he did not let me down, Jake. They killed it with this pick. Jared Verse, in my opinion, I don't even think it's a question. He's the defensive rookie of the year. I don't really know anybody who comes close, honestly. I know Eagles fans, think it should be their guy Mitchell, but I'm
Well, it
sorry.
shouldn't.
Yeah, it shouldn't. It should absolutely be Jared Verse. I mean, the guy has just been a stud all season, Jake. And you know what? Going into this game against the Eagles had their bulletin board material, right? Of the Jared Verse quote about not liking Eagles fans or whatever it was that he said, and getting angry when he sees the green and the white. Well, I thought that he backed it up, Jake. I know that, sadly we didn't win the game, but Jared Verse had a great game. He absolutely dominated that Eagles offensive line. I was surprised that he only ended up with 2 sacks, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, he was playing like he should have had more.
No, I know, but I don't look too much into the sacks, because I think like for his season, he could have easily finished with like 15, and he finished, I think it was like 4.5 or whatever. The pressures he had were ridiculous. I mean, he was among the top 5 in the league, and this is a guy that you saw, as well as some other guys, but this is a guy that you saw that when the lights got brighter, he got better. And that's the thing I really want to take away from this, is that a lot of these young guys were seeing the bright lights of the postseason for the first time, and they didn't bat an eye. Say what you will about the Barkley runs, that hurts the defense, and it does, but at the same time, like look at what they did against the Vikings. Like, you know what I mean? They dominated that game. And you saw some of the younger, these younger guys step up in a big way, and you saw leaders emerge. And I just feel like there's a lot of good to take away from this. The defense, Braden Fisk goes down, and it's just like this next man up approach. Immediately, Neville Gallimore just had maybe the best game of his
Yeah.
career, and it's not in that moment. He's not just like, oh, if I do well, I'm going to get paid. He just stepped up into a role, and he was the best damn player that he could possibly be. And the same thing goes for Desjuan Johnson, and the same thing goes for a lot of these guys, like Akello, for instance. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a guy who should have been paid last year. It's not a biased standpoint. It's not oh, well, I'm always right, but I was right. Trey White was coming off 2 of the 3 major injuries you could have that could cost you a career. He had both of them in the last 3 years. And he was coming off an Achilles tear. And to give him that money up front was just ridiculous. And to give it to him over a guy that just started 18 games for you, had the familiarity within your defense, and was a leader was even more ridiculous. And sure enough, Kello came in and he immediately made an impact. So did Darius Williams. They worked well in tandem. Same thing with Kobe Durant. And you could really see it. And there's a picture of Kello where he's on AJ Brown, and he does not give a single F about AJ Brown in that moment. He's making sure he's pointing over and getting his team lined up. That's the type of guy he was. This year, he and Quentin Lake became essentially like the leaders of the secondary. A lot of people don't know that. You watch the tape and you could see them. They are constantly communicating with the defense, getting the linebackers lined up. And I think in a lot of respects, while we do look at how, Omar Spates, his addition made it easier on Roseboom, and Roseboom immediately looked better, we don't look at what number 4 did when he came in, and just the immense ascension of this team from the moment Akello Witherspoon takes over after the 44-42 game against the Bills. And people weren't talking about, wow, we beat the Bills. A lot of people were talking about, wow, this defense gave up 42. That's unacceptable. Well, then look at after that. Akello Witherspoon starts in week 15 against the 49ers, and they never look back. And so you have him. You got, Kobe was banged up. So you got him and you got Darius. You got Christian Roseboom and Omar Spates that are getting lined up correctly because of the communication of Quentin Lake and Akello. Because a lot of defenses, like, say, the Eagles, I believe in this game, they had Zach Bond as the green dot, right? So normally you have a linebacker as the guy that is, dealing with all the signals and getting guys lined up and, telling guys different things and what have you. But the Rams operate a little bit differently. They want the guys to be like the captains. They want them to be in the secondary because they can, kind of oversee everything. And so that's the thing. Akello and Quentin Lake are constantly talking about these guys, getting them ready, getting them lined up, and it makes their job easier. And I just think when you're able to get everybody in position, you got the way Akello played, only giving up 4 total receptions to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, AJ Brown, and Devontae Smith in the postseason combined. And then you got, the way Kobe Durant's playing, the way Kobe Turner's playing, the way Braden Fisk and Jared Verse and Byron Young, who kind of just gets forgotten about way too often. Byron Young had himself a really good postseason as well. And then, you have the linebackers, like I mentioned, you got Quentin Lake, you got Cam Curl, just so many different things are going on, so many good things for the Rams defense. And that is what makes them so scary, is that they just have so much talent, and they might not be, a 90 overall in Madden or whatever. I don't know who still plays Madden. I don't, but they might not be 90 overall in Madden, but what they are collectively is one of the best defenses in all of football. And they proved that down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, I was really impressed, with how they played against the Eagles. I mean, obviously, the defense's weakness against the Eagles. I just mixed up defense and Eagles.
Yeah, that
Don't know how that happened.
the Desert Eagle from Call of Duty, the Deagle.
Is that a thing? I don't even know.
Yeah, it's
Oh, okay.
I forget what it has like a 50 I don't know. It's a big hand cannon. That's what I would say.
Is that good? I don't know anything about. I played Call of Duty. Was it Call of Duty Ghost? Was that
Oh
Call of
my
Duty?
god, that's a throwback.
Because yeah, I had one Call of Duty game that I got I think in high school, and I was very obsessed with it for a few weeks, and then stopped playing it. But I think it was Call of Duty Ghost. Anyways, was not trying to make a Call of Duty reference, just
That's
absolutely,
wild. I'm trying to
yeah,
think about when that
Call of Duty
was.
Ghost. I think it was like 2000. It had to be like 2012 because it was probably not. It was probably when I was not like having boyfriends, I think it was before. This was, before I
That
had a social life. So I'm pretty sure it was like 2011, 2012.
I think that's the only one I didn't play multiplayer on. Oh no, Infinity or Infinite Warfare. I never touched that with a 10-foot pole.
No, I had the Ghost one, and I liked, was it campaign mode
Yeah,
where
I,
you
I
had
mean,
story?
my favorite will always be the original Black Ops, but that's just me. I always loved it.
Well,
Never played it?
yeah. Black Ops, I think I played like if I would go to friends' houses and they had it, maybe because the whole reason I bought Call of Duty, we're on such a tangent now, but the whole reason I got Call of Duty Ghost was because I think I had played Black Ops. Like I'd gone to some
Okay.
friends' houses and I was like, "Oh, that might be, I kind of like this," like right when I was playing it. So then Ghost came out and I got Call of Duty Ghost.
Mm,
Um but
okay.
then kind of got tired of it, I think, probably relatively quickly. But me and my neighbor would play it. She'd come over and we would play Call of Duty Ghost.
It's
Um,
so funny.
2011, 2012. Anyways, I just mixed up my words. What I was trying to say before that entire conversation about Call of Duty was the one thing, that really kind of killed the defense this game was Saquon Barkley, right? I mean, those explosive runs by Saquon. The Rams' run defense just at certain moments just absolutely crumbled. I mean, the one touchdown by Jalen Hurts, I mean, that was brutal. I mean, that was kind of what killed the Rams this game, on the defensive side of the ball. Uh, which, again, it's a playoff game. You've got a young defense. It was snowing. I mean, everything is obviously working out of both teams' favors. So, we can't dwell on it too much, especially because, again, they had a really, really good year. The defense kept us in a lot of games because, as we've talked about, the offense just wasn't good enough this year. They just weren't. And it's okay to say that. They've got a lot of really talented players. They were able to do something, right, with what they had. Then they had a really good game right against the Bills. People forget about that. I mean, so they had the ability, they just didn't get it done in too many games this season and against the Eagles, when it mattered. So, I think the defense just deserves a lot of credit. Obviously hold them accountable for those Saquon Barkley runs and the Jalen Hurts touchdown, right? But I thought overall the defense played a really good game. I mean, 7 sacks. I mean,
It's
that's great. I mean, they played a really
yeah.
good game. They had those moments, right? With Barkley that ended up being, just they couldn't overcome it. But overall, I thought they played a relatively good game. And yeah, I thought, guys like Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, especially, who, by the way, are AP finalists for Defensive Rookie of the Year, officially, if people
I
didn't
mean,
see that.
it should be. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I think
I
it's
would.
gonna be Verse.
Yeah, I mean, it better be verse. It's going to be. There's no point. I mean, Pro Football Writers of America have verse, so that kind of normally tells you, unless they really screw it up. But we got super chats, so let's dive into those. Zaylor Swift. I never get tired of that name. I love that name. Thank you for the 5. Drake Stoops. Do you think we'll see him play more next year? Never say never. Austin Trammell, kind of a lot of people forgot about him, was on the practice squad, got elevated to 53, special teamer, and then all of a sudden he's getting offensive reps in 2023. It's never say never. I don't necessarily believe Stoops is going to be on the 53. He's probably a guy that will kind of stick around the practice squad. He gives them a look in the scout room. Like, he was what was he? He was supposed to be Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think, like
Maybe.
emulate that. So it was either him or Tyler Lockett. I think it was Jackson Smith and Jigba though. But on the scout team, he's definitely valuable. He gives them good looks, and when you have a scout team that can emulate your, what you're going to see on offense for your defense, and you have a guy that can, do it well, it's making everyone around him better. It's why I always say, when people are always like, two-time Super Bowl champion, the guy didn't even play. It's like, yeah, but he was part of that scout team that got these guys prepared. And you don't know, maybe some of the preparation of being a Jackson Smith and Jigba helped the Rams out, when they played him. You'll never know, but there's value there. So Stoops will be in the building. I just don't necessarily think he's going to have a huge role or anything like that, but we'll see. Stranger things have happened. Deb, thank you for the 20.
Thank you, Deb. And thank you, Sailor.
Yeah, got my alert. So popping in real quick to say thank you. You're the bestest. I've enjoyed getting to know you through this channel. Hope to meet you at a game next year. At OK, out of town, gotta run. Oh yeah.
Thanks,
thank you, Deb. I appreciate it. Sorry, I'm bad at reading. So, I mean, Alexis is the one that reads the books. Maybe I should just have her read all the super chats from now on. There you go. It's all yours.
All right.
I was serious.
All right. Well, from Craig, $5. Thank you so much, Craig. Appreciate it. Thank you for watching. He said KW said he needed to work on ball security and getting faster so could break away. That humility really touched me. I've had a change of heart. Well, thank you, Craig. I haven't actually, so that was what I was alluding to earlier. I saw the comments about it, but I haven't actually heard what Kyron said yet. So
can you imagine if he could get faster? It's possible. Cooper Kupp.
Football God said you'd be, yeah, I mean, he could. And by the way, he does have that ability. Like, remember the play that I first showed you ever of Kyron Williams? Do you remember that play? It was a 99-yard touchdown through the entire team. It was a little, listen, I get it's not what people want to say for explosives, but still, he has the ability to find ways. But I agree. But yeah, thank you, Craig. And I haven't actually seen that interview yet, but I believe it. I believe it. That's something that he would say.
He needs to contact Cooper Kupp and be like, man, I watched your 2017 film, and no disrespect, but you're slow as hell in this one. And then I'm watching 2019 after the torn ACL, and you're like fast. So like, what gives? Like, how did this happen? I mean, come on. I'm not saying he has to say it like that, but
yeah,
you watch Cooper Kupp in 2017. He was slow. Like, he was a slower receiver. Not fast at all. You wouldn't like mistake him for Tyreek Hill. Not saying you would mistake him for Tyreek Hill, like say during the Triple Crown season, but that one touchdown he has where he slows down, catches it against Tampa, and he's just gone. Or like the one catch he made where he had the 200+ yard game against the Bengals right before the bye week in 2019. Cooper Kupp just looks so much faster after his torn ACL. I'll never understand it. I don't know if he has like a bionic arm or a bionic leg or something, but oh my God. I've never understood why he's so much faster than he was in like 2017. I'll never understand it. But if Kyron can get that with everything he already has, because he can work on ball security. I feel like, now that it's really like taken hold this year, because I think he had 6 or 7 fumbles if you include the postseason. He's going to put an emphasis on that. And this is a guy that works extremely hard. And I just don't think people understand. There are players that take an off season and they just enjoy and they relax and they don't get much better. And you could see it. They're a player that always kind of stays the same. They don't have any breakouts or anything like that. Kyron Williams is not that type of player. He is going to be working his ass off to get better. And I do believe he's going to be better next year. And I think that'll be better in ball security. And I have a feeling he's going to get some speed training going. Well, he'll be a tick better, maybe a tick faster. Maybe he'll lose like 5 pounds or whatever he needs to do. But I think you'll see more speed next year. I do.
Would love to see it.
All right, next up.
Thank you, D-Tex.
Appreciate
Super
you.
chat from D-Tex. said, since McVay Rams have improved every year until they make the Super Bowl, next year we're making it to the NFC Championship at the very least. Hey, I would love to see it.
Yeah. No,
We
definitely.
were close. We were so close this year. I mean,
No, what's so bizarre to me is that I don't feel like Sean McVay has had an elite offense since they've won the Super Bowl. And they didn't even have what I would call an elite, they didn't have really a run game. Like, I mean, they had it, but it wasn't like top 10 or anything. Just wait, because if they do it this year with we've already seen with the defense, I mean, they could be really dangerous. I mean, they should be vying for the number one seed. I said it coming into this year. I'll say it again. The number one seed needs to be the goal, because if you have, everybody running through SoFi Stadium, well, you've jumped the gun. As soon as put together that number one seed, not only do you get the bye week, but you also have a chance to sell season tickets for the divisional round, for the NFC title game. And that gives you a lick up. Plus, next year, Alexis, do you know where the Super Bowl is? Oh, man.
it's at San Francisco or Santa
Yes.
Clara.
So if
Yeah.
they had a chance to win the Super Bowl on their turf after beating the 49ers when they called it, what SoFi, I forget what they call it. Levi South, that's what they call it. If they had a chance to do that and then go to Levi Stadium and win the Super Bowl there, oh my God, that would be the biggest FU to your rival. So I'm not saying that's like 100% going to happen, but what is worth mentioning is I'm almost positive SoFi Stadium is the following Super Bowl. So right back at home.
I hope we don't have to wait that long.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying, let's wait until, no, I want to win it on the 49ers field. I think that would be, you can never take that away. So
yeah,
that'd be huge.
Well, that would be huge.
Zaylor Swift, appreciate you. All I'm saying is Kyron's volume needs to be lower next year. Now, I agree with this because I don't think it's sustainable for any running back. And he's not the biggest running back. Like he's filled out, he's like, I think he's 210 now, but he's not the biggest running back. And so to give him the most touches a Rams player has had since Steven Jackson, that's asking a lot.
Well, yeah, and also again, people talk about fumbles. The higher your workload, your chance to do it, obviously skyrockets. And also durability. I mean, a huge people's reason to not like Kyron going into this season was the durability, right? That's all that we heard is, oh my God, he's going to get hurt 3 games in the season, whatever. He played every single game, and I don't see anybody giving him credit for it, especially because of the insane workload that he had. So not only did he play every single game without an injury, he carried the ball over 400 times.
Yeah, it's
I mean, that's crazy.
I had brought that up earlier, and I'm just kind of like, the big thing for him was durability, and then here he is, he goes and plays 19 games this year, because he didn't play week 18 because they sat him out. 19 games, 18, maybe 18, right? Because he played 16, no, 19. 18.
Because he played 17 regular season games and 2 playoff games.
Well, he didn't play 17 because he sat out the last game. So it would be 18? I don't know math.
We're so bad at math.
My math teacher, if she ever comes across my content, she'll hear me saying I'm bad at math multiple times and say, I'm not surprised.
Everyone forget that sequence that just happened. Anyways, back to Kyron Williams' durability.
Yeah, but that's still crazy. 18 straight games, having over 300. And how many overall touches did he finish this season with? I'm going to find that out right now.
It's over 400 because I saw.
No way. Really? Over 400?
I don't want to drop.
That's wild.
Kyron Williams had 400 touches. That came from a Rams reporter, but now I'm too scared to say who because I don't want to throw him under the bus. But I saw that And I have it up right now.
So he didn't have 400. He had. Oh no, he
Oh,
did.
yikes.
No, he did. He had
Yeah, he did. I was about to
403.
say this report is yeah.
He
He had how
had.
many?
Wait, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. No,
This
he
is the
had.
drama. I can't take
Okay,
this. Well, how many
so
touches did he have?
right, regular season, he finished with 350 touches, which is ridiculous. And then he had 39 touches in the postseason. So if you're doing the math, that puts him at 389. Or sorry, 400. No, yeah, 389, right?
Yeah, they must have been
389.
being they were rounding.
Yeah, it's okay to round.
389,
Oh,
400. I mean,
now
what's the
we can do what I
difference?
wanted to do. Ready for this? So 389 touches. Get this.
Okay.
This is wild. So, oh my God. You don't even understand. So, this actually is it's the most a Ram has touched the football since 2006. Steven Jackson had 436. And
Well,
people
like you
want
said
to look at
earlier,
him like he's chopped liver.
well, I think he's just, people have, for whatever reason, since we've drafted him, looked for ways to discredit him. And he's done some things, obviously, where criticism is warranted, the fumbles, right? But I mean, the workload has just been insane. I mean,
That's
again,
ridiculous.
and so and I agree with you. Like when people talk about, oh, his workload needs to be reduced, I agree with you, but not because he isn't capable of being a running back one. I mean, it's because quite literally, I mean, he's not built like a Steven Jackson to have that type of workload over multiple seasons. But
Yeah, and that amounted to over 1,600 total yards from scrimmage. Not half bad.
yeah, I mean, again, like we talked about, Kyron Williams was the Rams offense. I mean, people can say what they want, but statistically backs it up. And that's kind of been, as Jake and I talked about earlier, like off-season goal. Let's find some more people that can contribute, in the red zone because it's not sustainable. Teams are going to figure you out, but
I still can't
well,
believe he's had the most touches of any. Not Todd Gurley, not Kyron Williams. That's crazy.
I'm not surprised, but
I am because it's that just the what is it? I guess kind of that box that everybody put him in. Like,
yeah.
oh, he's this scat back. He's small, you know? I mean,
Well, yeah.
that's insane.
But a lot of people who said that didn't watch him at Notre Dame.
I
I
mean, what
think.
Steven Jackson did in I almost said 2026. That hasn't happened yet. 2006. What Steven Jackson did in 2006 is just insane too, because he
Especially
led the league in yards from scrimmage, by the way.
you look at that team too.
Yeah, that team, they should have made the playoffs. Not saying that, but they had a nice 3-game win streak at the end of the year. They were 5-8 and they won 3 straight. They won that overtime game against the Redskins. They beat the Vikings. They were the 10th offense in the league.
I miss watching Steven Jackson play.
That was the last good Rams team for quite a while, though. Because 8-8, yeah, that sucks and all, but
But
they
8-8
just missed
back then.
Well, yeah, I mean, 8-8 was common.
Well, but there's just such a period with the Rams where we were 8-8 would have been considered at some points like a good season, right? I mean, that would have been a very good season for some of those Rams teams.
Well, I mean,
So it's crazy how far we've come.
Yeah, he led the league in yards from scrimmage. That's crazy. I'm looking at it right now. He didn't even finish in the top 5 of. No, he did. He did. He finished 4th in offensive player of the year voting. He got 1 vote. LaDainian Tomlinson that year, he had more rushing yards. He had 31 touchdowns. Yeah, okay. It was that year. I understand. Drew Brees, Peyton Manning. But yeah, Steven Jackson, 2006, that was his best year. I mean, he was incredible. So,
Yeah.
I just think that, like, if you go back and you look, like, we're talking about Steven Jackson right now, that is the only season of his entire career where he had more touches than Kyron Williams had this entire year.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's huge. Like I'll check. I want to see Marshall Faulk. I want to see if he ever had, because that's the thing. Like Faulk was utilized as a pass catcher, almost like a wide receiver at times, and he had more than Kyron Williams once in his career, and that was 1998. He wasn't even on the Rams. He was on the Colts. It was his last year when they ran him in the ground, knowing they weren't going to pay him. And then Eric Dickerson. Let's check. Eric Dickerson's is crazy because he had more than Kyron most of his career. He had, with the Rams, he had a 430 touch season, a 400 touch season, a 441. Also, the time, like, that was just the times. Like, you ran the ball way more than you run it today. So the point being is that Kyron Williams, when you do the research, you actually do the math. If I'm not mistaken here, Alexis, he's got more touches in 2024 to 2025, including the postseason. He's got more touches than every single Ram besides Jackson in 2006 since Eric Dickerson.
Yeah. It's insane. It's incredible. It really is. And you look at the season that he's had as a whole. I mean, again, we talked about the touchdowns. I mean, people can say, 16 touchdowns for Kyron Williams. Twice as much as the second. I mean, the next guy was Demarcus Robinson at 7. So, incredible. I agree with you. But again, I can agree with that. And also, as Jake and I agree with, yes, his volume does need to be lower next year. There needs to be some of that workload taken off.
Yeah. Yeah. You won't get any complaints from me. I'm sure, Sean will go back and watch the tape during the offseason. Will be like, I can't believe I did that.
Do you want me to keep reading the super chats?
Yeah.
Are you embarrassed now?
No, I'm not. Havenstein was getting cooked on Sunday, according to Zaylor Swift. Thank you for the 5. So Havenstein, I don't think was getting cooked. I think he had some moments in pass pro that you would like to see go a little bit better. But I thought he was fine. He had his moments. The biggest issue was up front. Dotson did not have a good game. Bo Limmer did not have a good game. And so, yeah, I think that middle, like, interior to the right side struggled, and I can point the finger as to why. It's Jalen Carter. They tried to double him all game, and then the one play they didn't double him. There you go. The draft is loaded with running backs, and Corum is more shiftier than Kyron Williams. Let Kyron Williams play out his last year and get another running back. Love KW, but fumbles were issue in college. Also need a linebacker next to 48 and a nose tackle. Thank you, SoCal, for the 10.
SoCal for the 10.
I would just say this. There is essentially nothing out there to show that Blake Corum is better than Kyron in any way. I like Corum, but I can't help but thinking that the Rams would rather have Bucky Irving right now, or, the Rams would have rather gone a different direction. Because this is what I'll say. Blake Corum played out the entire season, and the entire point of drafting and bringing in Blake Corum was because they had identified an issue with Kyron Williams' workload and his usage. And they did not want to throw him into the fire and play him 98% of the time because they felt like that contributed to his injuries. Well, it turns out that last year's injuries were just fluky because he had way more. And that just tells me he had the most touches, including the postseason. He had the most touches for a Ram since Steven Jackson in 2006. They failed. That's what that tells me. They got Blake Corum because he can do all the same things Kyren can. Well, I think that's a little unfair to Kyren. We said all the time, you could say he has a similar archetype, you could say he has a similar skill set, but in no way can you tell me that Blake Corum is the same as Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams is a 2-time 1,000-yard rusher. Blake Corum hasn't done anything in his career. He's done nothing. He also did not score when they needed him to at the goal line. They put in Kyren Williams, he punched in the next. See, that's another thing. We look at, oh, well, all of Kyren Williams' touchdowns are at the goal line. That's a skill. People used to get on Todd Gurley about that. Be like, oh, Todd Gurley, all his runs are at the goal line. It's not like he does. That's a skill. And you know what? We didn't realize how lucky we had it because the 2017, 2018 teams were setting records. But what we don't understand is that, in that moment, because it's so easy to score for those teams, didn't it just feel like, oh, they're just going to score 30 every game? It was so easy, right? But now we haven't watched an elite offense in quite some time. And so the Rams, it's hard to score for this team. And they show you in the red zone. I mean, the red zone issues, they had their woes against the Eagles and it cost them. It's not easy to score. And when you have Kyren Williams, a guy that has a nose for the end zone, finds a way, gets those 4th down and short or 4th down and inches, those conversions, that's value. And I feel like we're so quick to just dismiss that. Like the whole thing with Jalen Hurts, it's like, oh, all his touchdowns are at the goal line. Well, the difference is the thing about Jalen Hurts at the goal line, not to take away a touchdown, but he's got the whole tush push thing going. He's got guys shoving him in. When does Kyren get that? So I just think if you're going to discredit goal line rushing touchdowns, I don't know. That's how I feel. And I SoCal, appreciate you. I don't mean to get on you. It's just in general. I see it all the time. It's not just you. It's like this whole Blake Corum is shifty or he's better or whatever. He has not proven that. Not for 1 second. The guy, but he hasn't proven anything.
I agree with you. And this is why people who watch our NFL draft stream every year, when they drafted Blake Corum, I was very audibly not pleased by it. And everybody was so confused. And I said at the time, and I got a lot of criticism for it, is I was they needed to draft. I wanted them to draft that bigger back. Now, I'll be fair. I wasn't saying explosive, which now is what I'm saying now. So at the time, my analysis wasn't maybe what I would say now, but it was in that similar vein of I really want them to draft a different type of running back than Kyren Williams, right? But then the conversation became, okay, well, they drafted Corum so that way they can, ease Kyren Williams' workload and then just put Corum in and he could do the same things. Well, they didn't put Corum in hardly at all this season. That's what everybody's been talking about. Why'd you make the pick? And what that tells me is whatever the Rams were seeing in practice or the very few touches, he was getting in the games, they weren't liking what they were seeing. And you mentioned the goal line, for example. I mean, McVay tried to get him in a touchdown. I'm blanking on who their opponent was that game, but they're, like you mentioned, they put him in at the goal line. He had 3 opportunities and could not do it. They put in Kyren, he scores. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Now, I do think Corum is going to get more touches next season. We'll talk about that more as the season goes on, but there was a reason that Blake Corum did not play a lot this season.
Yeah, I also think, there is a reason. I don't really like to get on Blake Corum for his lack of play either. I mean, I do think there was an issue. I think that there were 2022 where they had the plan to get Allen Robinson. And initially I loved it because I was like, oh, Allen Robinson with potentially OBJ at some point, when he gets healthy, and you got Robert Woods and you got Cooper Kupp, and you start to think about it and you're like, oh, wow, it's a diversified wide receiver room. But then they come out and they're like, yeah, we're actually going to trade Robert Woods for nothing. And Allen Robinson's the guy. And at that point, I'm annoyed, but I'm like, okay, I can see the vision. Then Allen Robinson, all advanced metrics show you Allen Robinson had some crazy separated numbers. People act like he couldn't separate. That was the biggest thing, right? Can't separate. There's multiple, advanced metrics out there that show you Allen Robinson in 2022 separated more than any wide receiver on the Rams that year. Okay. But the reason I bring him up is because this is a tell. It's a show. They had a plan with Allen Robinson. They barely utilized him, right? And he played every game. And so they barely utilized him. Plan goes south, right? They had a plan with Bobby Wagner, okay? The plan goes south. They get rid of him after the season. They've had plans in the past. They brought in Lance Dunbar to be the spell back for Todd Gurley. I don't even think he saw a game where he had more than 10 touches. So they've had plans in the past, and we've now seen it, this year. They had the plan. Jonah Jackson, I already mentioned. They had the plan when they drafted Blake Corum. He was going to spell Kyren Williams. And I love the rationale, because the point being was he comes in and they love Kyren Williams so much that they don't want to, lose anything that he brings to the table. So the hope was Blake Corum could emulate Kyren the best he could, where if he comes off the field, you're not really feeling the loss. Obviously, it's not Kyren Williams, but they were thinking, okay, he's similar in that skill set where we can still run our offense how we want to run it, unlike having to change things up because it's Royce Freeman or Darrell Henderson or whoever. And that was the concern that people had, because I think you and I had really talked all off season. And I think in the draft, I got talked into it, but all off season, we had talked about guys like Braylon Allen. I had mentioned, Vidal from, the Chargers, like these guys that, Tyrone Tracy, that could add a dynamic to the passing game, but also they had that home run hitting ability, Trey Benson. And when they went out and got a guy that had kind of the similar speed and everything, you understand it like, okay, he does all the same things as Kyren, like, on paper, right? That was the assumption. But the plan failed, because any scenario before the season, any scenario where Kyren Williams ends up having almost 400 touches, including the postseason, your original plan you sought after, you're essentially the issue you were trying to fix, that blew up in smoke. Because am I wrong? I mean, that was the whole point, is that going out and getting somebody who was good enough that you didn't have to feel like Kyren had to be on the field 99% of the time. Well, now Kyren just had, as we've talked about, the third most touches of a Rams running back since Eric Dickerson. And to me, that's just insane.
Well, it is insane, especially when you took a running back in the third round to kind of quell that, right? That again, it's the circle that the full circle moment is that it's unfortunate, because then you go, okay, what else could we have maybe done with that third round pick, right? Or what does this mean now? Because now you've realized as a team, okay, we're not really comfortable playing Corum that much, for Kyren. We still want Kyren out there 95% of the time. Well, then what do you do? Because now you're talking about an extension, but you're tied to Blake Corum. So
Yeah.
now okay, well, we're tied to Blake Corum, but we want to keep Kyren Williams. Les Snead said it today. If everybody missed that, I mean, the Rams are going to try to extend Kyren Williams. So now, as a team, all right, we are going to stick with Kyren. The guy who led the offense, in touchdowns, revolutionized, I think, in a way, McVay's offense, as you and I have talked about, is it's really the first time McVay has had a balanced offense since Gurley. So you've got Kyren, but now you're tied to Blake. Now you go, okay, now where is that home run, hitting back? Do we want to even do that now with our running backs? Do we stick with what we've been doing at running back and maybe go try to find the explosive playmaker at receiver or tight end, right? So now you're kind of in a situation that if you had maybe taken a Bucky Irving, remember we took Blake Corum over Bucky Irving,
Yeah.
right? Or you had taken a Braylon Allen or somebody like that, you might be feeling a little bit better right now in terms of what you want to do with your run game and not feel like, all right, now we've got to nail another, maybe fourth, fifth, sixth round running back this upcoming draft to be the opposite of Kyron and Corum. So, hindsight's 2020, obviously, but like I said, I think that this was something that a lot of people, including myself, felt like was obvious at the last draft is, what are you doing taking Blake Corum at the end of the third round? I do think, people can try to justify it however they want. Whatever the reason was, it obviously did not pan out
Yeah.
because
I
as
mean,
you threw out that number, the
yeah.
touches were more.
Because
So,
if that was your plan, use him more. But if he wasn't
right.
ready, then you can't use him more. So it's a failure anyway. But you have 3 more years of Corum. That's the good news. The bad news is you have 3 more years of Corum on this cheap deal that could have been used to get somebody else that would have better suited this team. Now, keep in mind, they've drafted better than anybody in the league the last 2 years. So it's not like we're saying that this draft class is an utter failure, but it is a reminder that these things do come back to bite you. They've had plans in the past that have not worked out. You look at 2017, the first draft pick of the Sean McVay era was Gerald Everett. Good player, but I mean, they passed up on getting George Kittle. Now, a lot of teams passed up on him, but they don't get George Kittle. And, then 2018, their third overall pick is Joseph Noteboom, or the third round pick is Joseph Noteboom, the first pick of that draft. And they go out and they get Brian Allen. And Allen's, he stuck around for a while. But then you look at, 2019, and it's like they draft Taylor Rapp. They even said that they'd be fine picking him in the first round. He doesn't come back on an extension, so that's a player that you put a second round pick into, and you didn't even give him, an additional contract. David Long is another one. Bobby Evans was a third rounder that they hoped would be able to be a starter. Didn't work out. 2020, Cam Akers, Van Jefferson. I mean, Van Jefferson didn't even finish out his rookie deal. They traded him in the middle of his final year. Cam Akers did not get the contract extension. Terrell Lewis was a third rounder. They were hoping to be, a starting edge defender. He gets cut. Terrell Burgess, I never thought he got a fair shake, but that happens. Bryson Hopkins, I never felt like he got a fair shake. He plays out his, contract a year and then he's gone. Ernest Jones doesn't get a contract. Tutu Atwell was barely utilized, right? Robert Rochelle, a former fourth round pick, they just cut outright. Jacob Harris, I don't think we ever saw him really get an opportunity in a regular season game. He was a fourth round pick, just cut, Then you have 2022. Logan Bruss is the top pick that they had that year. Third rounder, they told us how great he was. The scout jumps in the pool. He's so excited. The plan was that Logan Bruss was going to play guard. It didn't work out. So really the point I'm making here, and keep in mind in that draft, they drafted guys like Kobe Durant, Kyron Williams, Quentin Lake, Darion Kendrick, Russ East, who started, quite a few games for them. That's the thing, is that I can be critical and also give credit, but they have missed on some guys on that day too, where it's like, yeah. So I guess really what I'm saying here is that, like, Stetson Bennett in the fourth round, for instance, what I'm saying here is that just because Blake Corum is a third round pick doesn't necessarily mean the Rams will not draft a running back this draft. It doesn't necessarily mean that the Rams won't extend Kyron Williams because they have the future in Blake Corum. I think that's the thing we need people to understand here, is that just because they spent a day 2 pick on Blake Corum, who's a big name, won a national title, does not mean that he's locked in as the starter long term, because the way things work out, man, I'll tell you, the way they finished out the season, Blake Corum was not there. He got hurt in week 18. He was barely playing this year, right? Kyron Williams, I don't think he missed a snap. I don't think Maybe Ronnie Rivers took one carry. I don't even remember. But the point being is that regardless how you feel, it didn't work out. Like, he did not just take over as the starting job. Like, we knew he wouldn't. We talked about it all off season, and I don't think he's going to do it next year. And I actually think he's in jeopardy of falling to that third spot. And guess what? I like the guy. So I hope he doesn't. I actually hope, he fights and gets some opportunities. But I'm just telling you right now, based on what we've seen in the past, the Logan Bruss pick, the Bobby Evans of the world, the Joe Notebooms, these are guys they drafted on day 2, expecting them to be starters, and they didn't end up being starters. They paid Noteboom to be the guy. And as soon as they realized he wasn't, they backed away. So say what you will about the missing on certain picks and what have you. What this team does is they might miss on picks, but they're the first people to let you know, we screwed this up. We're just going to cut bait. And so that's why I'd say, if you're just saying, yeah, Blake Corum is going to be our starter next year, get rid of Kyron Williams, it's not as simple as that. I really think that there's more of a chance of the Rams drafting a running back to be their number 2 behind Kyron and displacing Blake Corum back into the third role than there is of Blake Corum, or than it is of Kyron Williams being replaced.
I agree.
Anyway, Matthew, thank you for the 20. Good evening, guys and gals. I'm a defensive guy, so I'm stoked about this young defense. Any good DBs in the draft? Alexis, I have some, but I'll leave it up to you for the most part. I can give you the Kansas guys, Kobe Bryant, Mello Dotson. I lean towards Mello being the better one of those. And then I know your guy from Notre Dame, and that's it. I have not done enough research with the draft, full disclosure, to be able to give you a list.
I have not either, so I don't want to, just start pretending throwing names out there, but Ben Morrison out of Notre Dame, obviously
That was the
very
one.
good.
Yep.
He should be a first round pick. I mean, you've got your obvious like Travis Hunter, right?
Yeah.
Will Johnson out of Michigan, but I haven't watched really any tape officially of any of these guys yet, so I just have to kind of go off what I've seen. But I think the Rams, I think if you would have asked me a couple months ago, I would have been looking for the Rams to take a corner in the first round. Not so much anymore. I don't think that's the direction they go. So I don't know. I feel like a lot of the defensive backs that I end up watching are going to be kind of those later round, mid round, late round
I have one.
guys.
He was my first round. People are going to laugh at me, but this is why way too early mock drafts are silly. He was my first round pick for the Rams, way too early. Jabbar Muhammad, Washington
Oregon?
transfer to Oregon.
Yeah. I know that name.
Yeah, I've
familiar.
seen like mock drafts having him go like day 3, like early day 3. So that's what I mean. Like, people are going to laugh, but I like Jabbar Muhammad. And when I was watching his tape for the way too early mock draft, I felt like that was the guy who just had that kind of, I don't know. He was feisty in coverage, and he just kind of had that look of like a Rams corner, like kind of similar to like, Kobe. I don't know if, they'll draft him or whatever. I haven't watched enough film on him, and I don't even remember most of the film I watched, just kind of like how I felt about it. But yeah, like, we're going to get to the draft. Don't worry. We'll be ready for that. But as of right now, and this is the good news, is I've been doing this for years, that I can catch up. And I don't sleep, as you know. So, I mean, I could learn more about the draft in one night than, some people in 2-3 weeks. I mean, that's just, because of my sleep schedule.
And I do just want to, because you'll find this interesting. The Cowboys just hired their new head coach. Do you know who it is?
It's former St. Louis Rams offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer.
Yep.
That is insane, but good for him.
Good for him, but just,
I wouldn't want to be a Cowboys fan. I could tell you that much.
I mean, it's no shade, but kind of shade, but I mean, good for him. I just think, Cowboys fans have now been on a wild ride. They like really convinced themselves, a lot of them, that like they were going to get Sanders.
It reminds me of, okay, so who replaced, was it, oh man, who was it? I think it was Ron Rivera who replaced Jay Gruden, right?
Yes, he came over from Carolina and then went
Yeah,
to the Commanders.
it's that to me. It's that. You had Sean McVay in your back pocket, and for Dallas, they let Kellen Moore go and they let Dan Quinn go. Now they didn't leave, like they didn't like cut them or whatever. They didn't fire them, but they let them leave essentially. Just to fire Mike McCarthy the next year, they let Dan Quinn go. Dan Quinn has already coached in a Super Bowl. Dallas hasn't gotten past the divisional round of the playoffs since like 1995, which is the year I was born. So this is what we're at right now. When Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, all those guys were there in Washington, and they had Jay Gruden, right? Nothing against Jay Gruden, but like they let Sean McVay leave the building to then fire Jay Gruden and hire Ron Rivera, he's just a guy. He's not that great of a head coach. The Cowboys just hired Brian Schottenheimer when they had Dan Quinn in their back pocket. I mean, I just say it all the time. I'm just glad I'm not a fan of these teams because I don't know, man. I cannot for the life of me believe that you like some of these coaches that go out the door. Like I like Todd Bowles, but I was under the impression Todd Bowles was gone. And I just found out today that Tampa wasn't giving Liam Cohen the job. Tampa was extending Liam Cohen to be the offensive coordinator. I could not even believe that. I thought he was getting promoted. And then people are
that whole debacle, I missed that because I was doing improv. So I was like not
oh, yeah.
near my phone, but I caught up late.
I thought with all the mumbo jumbo and everything, I totally thought that it was because he committed to be the head coach and then left for Jacksonville. I understand some of the blowback, like he should have told them or whatever, but it's a way better opportunity. Like what? I don't know. I can't believe they didn't tell him to be or like force him into the head coaching role because they got to move on from Bowles. I like Bowles, but like he's just not doing it. So yeah, still can't believe that. Anyway, we got 4 more super chats and then we'll wrap this thing up. Edwin, appreciate you. Thank you for the 5. A couple questions for you. If this was Cup's last season with the Rams, what is your favorite Cup moment? Thank you both for all the great videos. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
I mean, it's got to be the Super Bowl.
That's what I was thinking too. I think it just, I think he had such a magical year. And then to get that touchdown in the Super Bowl, I mean, how can you not think of that?
Well, I guess on that drive, there are 3 of them. Would you say the 4th down conversion that kept them alive, the no look pass, or the touchdown? Because I
still got to go the
touchdown. It's got to be the touchdown, right? Because that's when you know. I mean, the Puka Nacua catch against the Eagles is a perfect example. No one cares if it doesn't get done. If you don't win, it's like, oh, that was a nice catch. We don't talk about it. But that catch is immortalized if they come back and they win and say they go on to win the Super Bowl. People would still be talking about, like, can you believe that Nacua catch? That was the thing that carried us. I got to say that. I think the touchdown because I just have that picture in my head. It just never will go away. And I'm sure Bengals fans have that too in a different way. Great question, though. Edwin, thank you for the 5 again. Who do you believe has the biggest impact to the Rams organization? McVay, Snead, Donald, or Stafford? I'll let you answer first. I know my question. I know my answer.
It's hard because Aaron Donald was included, and in my opinion, Aaron Donald is the greatest defensive tackle of all time. But I think as a whole, I might have to say Sean McVay. I just think McVay kind of revolutionized, to go from Jeff Fisher to McVay. I mean, there's kind of like a before McVay and then McVay to me.
It's McVay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's not Snead. It's not. I love Stafford, but I I think you, again, like I said, it's almost like there's like a block, right? Where you think before McVay and then McVay. It's just two very, I mean, it was a turning point for everything, I think, that happened. I mean, I'll let you elaborate, Jake, but that was my answer.
Yeah, I think it was I forget what I had when I made the YouTube short, but it was like 76 wins. Sean McVay's first 76 wins came in 8 seasons, not even full 8 seasons. And before that, it took the Rams since 2003 to have 76 wins before Sean McVay. So that to me is the biggest impact, because you could say Aaron Donald and what he meant to the development of those defensive linemen and how he made some huge plays. I mean, do they win the game against the 49ers? Do they win the game against the Bengals without him? Who knows? Snead, because he was finally able to be like the guy. Like, I think during the Fisher era, I think Fisher had more, I think he had more control than, was publicized. So I mean, obviously with the FM picks and not being afraid to make big time moves. Stafford, because they didn't win a Super Bowl with McVay and they had just missed the playoffs and then got back to the playoffs, and you could tell they were really just lacking the firepower. And then the moment he steps in that organization, everything changes and they just look so dominant and they end up winning it all. And then the thing about McVay is just, we watched this team they were not good. They were just not good for the longest time. I mean, Spagnuolo, I do believe, never got a fair shake because the first year he had nothing around him. They're 1-15. They basically were tanking to get Sam Bradford. We all know that. Then 2010, he finally has his quarterback. He starts to have stuff around him. Pat Shurmur leaves him, by the way, to become a head coach. But Pat Shurmur and the Rams offense, they end up getting to the final game, week 17. They have to go to Seattle and beat them to get to the playoffs, and they lose. So they were one game away, essentially, from going to the playoffs. And that was a huge turnaround because at that point, they were the Sosar Rams. They were the 1-15, 2-14. This team doesn't do that. The following year, Pat Shurmur leaves to become the head coach for the Browns, which is a huge, huge hit. Not Stafford. Bradford's development, Spagnuolo, he's young as a young head coach. Now he has to, figure out what's he going to do. He goes out and he gets Josh McDaniels. McDaniels is like an icon in the offensive coordinating game, right? He's known all the stuff with Brady and, he went and became a head coach with the Broncos. It didn't work out well. So he goes to the Rams to try to boost his stock back up. And what people don't realize, and this is actually a concern of him being back as the offensive coordinator for the Patriots this year, Alexis, is with a young team, he's got a very, very complicated offense. And I say to this day, his complicated offense hurt that team. These guys were getting injured because they were trying to process the offense. They had a record-setting amount of injuries that year. Josh Gordy went off his couch and became the leading interception leader for the team. And I think he only played the last 7 games of the year. I mean, that team was banged up. And because they only won 2 games, Spagnuolo's gone. Now, do I think Spagnuolo turns it around and turns into a, Sean McVay? No. But I still, to this day, don't feel like he got a fair shake. Then Jeff Fisher comes in and, he's the joke, 8-8, whatever. Wasn't even really 8-8, like 7-8-1, 7-9, 6-10. But Fisher was like, he added stability. He had been to a Super Bowl before. He had taken his team through a move. So they kept him on board when they moved to LA. And that year, they just knew they had to get rid of him. And when Sean McVay came into that building, which is who I wanted from the get-go, it was just night and day. He wasn't ready to be a head coach, and he knew that. So the way he did things was, I'm going to be the leader, but I'm going to have guys in position. I'm going to be smart enough to realize what I don't have yet, experience, and I'm going to surround myself with the best guys. And he went out and got an all-timer, will be Hall of Famer, and just a legendary defensive coordinator, Wade Phillips. He brought in Joe Barry, who he has experience with, coaching with on Washington, but also Barry kept him kind of, in control because he was the assistant head coach. And then he went out and got Greg Olson, who was the Rams offensive coordinator in 2008. But he went out and got, another veteran guy to be the quarterback's coach. There's a lot of veterans. Then he surrounded himself with the rest of those pieces were his buddies, if you will. But it wasn't just playing, oh, yeah, I'm with my best friends. It was guys he trusted. It was guys like Chris Shula, who he saw through the full development process. Now Shula is here, and he's become the defensive coordinator 8 years later. Aubrey Pleasant, right? And Ejiro Evero. And you saw him start to build this, this coaching staff. But in addition to that, it was the veteran players he added. A John Sullivan at center. Was he the best center on the market? No. But John Sullivan knew that this team needed some leadership. They went from freaking Greg Robinson to Andrew Whitworth over the course of 2 months.
Yeah.
That's crazy. 3 months, maybe. That's crazy. Huge upgrade. And so the point is, McVay had such an impact because he got these guys to buy in, and they came over, and that's what ended up happening. So I would say McVay. It's a long-winded answer, but I wanted to story time. All right. 2 more here. Thank you, AK Grandmaster B, for the 5. Love what you guys do. Continue the great work. Did you receive what I sent you? I didn't get tracking for them, so no idea where they're at.
I did, if this is who I think it is. I'm really bad at like usernames. I know what your username on X is, but I did. Thank you very much. I got it yesterday.
If I gave you my P.O. box, I've been so bad checking my P.O. box, so I'm going to have to check that. So I probably got it. I just haven't. And the P.O. boxes, they're not connected with like the online tracking. So like I never get alerts when I get one. I just have to go and check it periodically. So I'm going to check it probably tomorrow, I would say. I'll let you know. SoCal, appreciate the 2. Jake, tell us about the new uniforms. What's so funny is I just recorded a video before we went live, and I literally say in this how everyone's talking about 2025 before the season, and a lot of the reason is because of the uniforms. I have no idea. The people keep asking me like I know I'm in the know about the uniform. I don't know what they're doing. I have no clue. Zero. The helmets, like getting rid of the partition, first off, I guess I'm in the minority. I love the slice through it. I actually have, that's grown on me. Alexis is like, I'm trying not to, cuss you out right now, but, but I do like it.
I'm not saying anything.
But there are a lot of people that like just the full on horn, but I know nothing about that. So yeah, people keep asking me and I have no idea. None. What say you? Do you know anything?
I don't.
Yeah.
It never ends well for me when I discuss the Rams uniforms, so I just have learned to stay out of it.
Yeah.
Not gonna, people, I'm not the biggest fan, but it is what it is. So I don't really care that much,
I don't care. I just want another Lombardi. That's all I care about. I wish I could watch our team this Sunday. That's what I care about.
I know.
I do. I don't give a rippity doodah about the uniforms. I just don't. I like them. I wouldn't mind bringing back the throwback ones every once in a while, but like,
hey, I want to see a navy and gold throwback.
Well, you're gonna get us killed if.
I mean, I think it would come out of left. It would. It'd be cool. It'd come out of left field. Nobody would see it coming. You see the Rams step out in like a modernized navy and gold uniform with like the navy and gold helmets.
I think they should have a 1951 NFL championship, like Rams edition. And they haven't done this since 1995, I believe, when Bettis was there. So since I was born. But yeah, I think I would go with the yellow top. And I know people want black as well. If you could work it in, I wouldn't be against it. Would also like white, like for pants, just because you only have the bone and it just doesn't totally work, So I think that's what I would say is that because if you went with the white pants and then you added a a yellow and black, maybe black. So all black, because then you have the black pants in your arsenal. White pants with the yellow top, and then maybe a yellow pants. Like, I don't know, because I still say to this day, I'll never forget as long as I live. The Force Awakens came out in 2015. The day it came out, Star Wars came back. It was Thursday Night Football. Rams in their Team Banana logo, their Team Banana color rush, and the ketchup, Tampa Bay one. And Tampa's uniforms look terrible, but the Rams all yellow were fire. I don't care what anyone says. I absolutely love them, and I love them back. We're not going to talk about the Ravens game. I purposely left that out.
Yeah, let's next.
The one where we were podcasting in, the third quarter.
We just had enough, and
we were just laughing.
Yeah, that was bad.
Anyway, that is going to do it. We appreciate you guys.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you guys, and again, just thank you so much for riding with us, this season and tuning into every episode of the show. And this was Jake and I's fifth season doing this show together. Because it was the 2019, 2020, 21.
I'd have to ask you, because remember, I was like, oh, yeah, it's our fifth anniversary. Yeah.
It was our sixth season being co-hosts of this show and doing it together. And that is crazy. So we appreciate everybody who tunes in every week and listens to us. And, we got through this together. This loss, we're bummed about it, but as Jake and I have said, we're just so proud of this team, and are looking forward to discussing kind of what we think could happen in the off season to try and get us over that hill and to the Super Bowl next season. So we'll definitely be back to talk about that, but we're going to take a little hiatus as we usually do through the rest of the NFL playoffs. So about a month, I'd say month and a half. We're going to take a break from the show and then be back with our draft coverage that we do every year, and hopefully getting some awesome prospects in the show like we normally do and interviewing them. And Jake, I don't know that we've ever had a season where two guys we've interviewed have been drafted by the Rams. We always seem to find one. Out of all the guys that we interview, it's like we'll have like a Quentin Lake or Brennan Jackson, right? But I am making it my goal, my personal goal this season. Well, I guess I have no control over it. I'm not in the Rams front office. But my sincere hope for this season is that this will be the first Downtown Rams offseason where two of the prospects we interview, at least two, get drafted by the Rams. Because we always hit we get one.
Two?
It might be a big goal, but I'm feeling like, maybe this is our year where we get double.
Perhaps it is.
Perhaps. We'll see. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We really, really appreciate it. We got 1,000 people watching right now live. It means so much to us. Please keep up with us. We're still on social media. You can follow us on social media at Downtown Rams. You can follow me on Twitter/X at the Alexis Craft, and then I'm on Instagram at Alexis Craft. Jake is on both platforms at JK Bogan. And guys, like we said, thanks for sticking with us this season. We love you guys. We appreciate it. We'll be back very soon. But until then, as always, stay safe, take care, and go Rams.